I'm Pam Montgomery.
And I'm Bob Montgomery.
And we welcome you to the bus trip to the Landcare sites. We're celebrating Landcare Week a little differently this year, as COVID-19 has made this year very different. We're still going to take you to a variety of our wonderful Landcare sites, but this year it will be virtual. And since we aren't bounded by our usual constraints, we won't just be going by bus. We'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. We are in a Wabikal country, but we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that you are joining us from today and pay our respects to elders past, present and future. We will be visiting sites from a range of environments today, from foreshore to farmland and rainforest to riparian, everything in between. Our first site visit will be to the beautiful coastal environment of Blacksmiths Beach, where the Dream Care Group has just celebrated 30 years. That's a long time. Nigel, the group's team leader and founder, will tell you more.
The team started in June 1990 following a meeting held by the Council and Department of Land and Water Conservation at the local surf club. We started off with a beach with no dunes at all. In 1993 we had 2 dunes bulldozed in, a fore dune and a hind dune. We vegetated that over the next 5 to 10 years, and now we're left with a beach that looks nearly as normal as most beaches that are untouched along the coast. When we started, the beach consisted of about 80% bitu bush with a few banksias and tea trees growing through it. Once we removed the bitu bush, all the natural flora came back. So now we've got everything from banksias, tea trees, coffee bushes, heath plants, everything that you could normally expect to find on the beach. What we've tried to do in the last 10 years is reintroduce some species that never came back, such as the tuckaroo, melaleucas, casuarinas are the main ones, and it's going to be a long process because the bush is so thick now it's hard to find a spot to put a new species in. We've gone from sparrows and starlings to anything from a superb blue wren to a yellow-tailed black cockatoo. Nearly every bird in between that lives on the coast has been here. Galahs, corellas, blue-faced honeyeaters have just turned up, scarlet-chested honeyeaters, double-bar finches. We've got a pair of echidnas in the dunes, we've got diamond pythons. So the whole place has gone from a desert to a normal place of animals and plants, a normal environment. Besides the environmental aspects, which are huge, and we've gained respect from nationally and internationally for the work we've done here, it's the people who appreciate what you've done, the visitors, the locals, and the joy of working with the volunteers who give up their time to come here and work hard for a few hours to better the world. To see how it's progressed from 1990 until today, the vast difference is unbelievable, and we have trouble convincing some people that this isn't what the beach always looked like, because now it's natural to everybody. This is how it is.
Our next site is on the other side of the lake, Sunshine Silverwater, Foreshore Reserve. There we'll meet group team leader Marion Luck, and she'll talk about the works the group have been undertaking, vegetation on site, and also very interesting history. G'day Marion, get ready to grab the rope.
Well, our group started long before I became involved. It's been around for 25 years, and it was called the South Lakes Landcare at the time that it started. And also it worked on a number of sites. Eventually they focused mainly on the park at Sunshine. Once the park was established and they were really happy with what they'd achieved there, they started to spread more and moved more along the foreshore. So this was just a massive lantana. When I first came to Sunshine, it was a massive lantana. By the time I joined the group, so several years later, it had been cleared of lantana and planted. They had a big planting program. And then shortly within a time of me becoming involved with the group, this became heavily infested with ground asparagus and climbing asparagus. So then we had to kind of like completely revamp our efforts to rid it of weed, and that's been the most recent weeding program that we've achieved here. And now it's inundated with exotic grasses. So I guess that's the third level of weeding for us to tackle. So along fringing the lake all along from Sunshine Park all the way through to Johnny's Point, and on quite a large section of Johnny's Point is an endangered ecological community called River Flat Eucalypt Forest on coastal floodplain. Down here, the characteristic feature is the Eucalyptus terraticornis, that's the forest red gum, and the Casuarina glauca, which is the swamp oak. I think you get a better picture of it at Johnny's Point because there's a larger area that fits that description, and there are a lot of plants that have survived that, even though there was a lot of weed there as well. So the vegetation up on the slope goes all the way up to the ridge where the road is, and it's a drier vegetation community than what we see in the park and along the foreshore. Because it's drier, you get more of the typical sclerophyll woodland plants, including a lot of the egg and bacon pea flowers and banksias. There are also a lot of grass trees throughout that area of the bush. We have a lot of these smooth-barked apple trees. They're very dominant in this vegetation community, and so are the scribbly gums. You'll see plenty of them further up the slope. Also in this whole section of the bush is an endangered species called Tetratheca juncea, or black-eyed Susan. It's a really sweet pink flower on it's fairly much at ground level, and it's very beautiful when it comes into flower in spring, and it flowers for up to 2 months. And the other endangered species that's really notable is the squirrel glider, which also lives in this area. We have 2 work mornings a month. We're always looking for new members, but also anybody in the area that isn't interested in joining can still help us by being careful about what they plant and what they have growing in their garden. We've put together a brochure that helps to clarify for them what we would like them to get rid of if it's growing in their garden, and also what they can plant in its place.
Hey, going back there. So our next stop is Gulcoola Farm in the township of Luscontyre, where we'll meet the farm owner, John Schultz. Many of you might remember John from our panel of discussion following the screening of 2040 National Volunteer Week. At Gulcoola, they're practicing regenerative agriculture and land care. We're actually planning on doing a series of stories about Luscontyre land care, so keep your eye on our YouTube channel. More stories from Gulcoola. Hold on.
If we got everyone in this valley doing what we do here, that's an awful lot of carbon going in the ground. We were looking through name books, and there was an Aboriginal name, Gulcoola, which meant sweet. We decided if we ever had a farm, we were going to call it Gulcoola because it meant sweet. And it's become pretty sweet, you know. It's sweet for the cows, it's sweet for us, so it's pretty fitting. Gulcoola Farm. When we came here in 2002, this fence behind us wasn't intact. There was a fence across just down the gully here, and there was a fence on the other side. That was all that was here with the boundary fences. The grass on the hill over here was all right, but there was nothing like this. Nothing like this. When we came into winter, our first winter, it was bare. We had to start buying hay. There was just no feed. It just didn't grow. And we tried everything. We tried everything to make it grow, and nothing seemed to work. We did rotational grazing, but nothing like what we do now. Living root in the soil at all time, no bare ground, using animals, and so I looked at that and thought, yeah, that's something we can do. No fertiliser, just wire, tread-in posts and water, and you can see that it certainly makes a difference compared to what other people do. A lot of things have changed. The biology of the soil has increased because we're seeing things like the cow manure. You can see that it's crumbly, it's soft. This is from when the cows were here, not today, but from probably late summer, since they've been in here. So we have seeds germinating. It's gone through the rumen of the cow, and seeds germinating in the manure. Dung beetles are here now because we no longer use drench on the cattle. We have a diversity of plants that we never saw before. We find that the cows with a clean gut, no chemical in them, will deposit seed like this right through the farm. So we're getting a mixture of species travel through the farm, and the quality of the plants is improving all the time as well. We've gone from having a tough time in winter to where you're looking for every spot of grass you can find, to now maybe we don't have to put in winter pasture anymore. Maybe it's just going to be here.
Follow me now down Blue Wren Creek to Central Rankin Park Landcare site, a group that's been operating for 25 years. Long-time Landcarer John Fitter is going to tell us about a wonderful project installing nest boxes for birds and for bats. John's using skills he developed in a digital stories course that he recently completed. And it's a great way to tell your group's story. Come on, let's go.
The clearing of bushland for urban development is a leading cause of the loss of habitat and biodiversity. Central Rankin Park Landcare Group have for 25 years been aiming to restore and rehabilitate the remnant bushland and riparian zone of Blue Wren Creek in the Elbrook Drive Reserve in Rankin Park. Important components of success are a stratified structure of canopies of endemic flora species, the inclusion of nesting sites for birds, mammals, including microbats. Restoration of the environment can take many years before suitable nesting hollows are available. However, creating such sites with manufactured hollows can provide for this deficiency. In 2019 we were successful in obtaining funding through Lake Macquarie City Council's Sustainability Program to install nesting boxes to mature trees along the creek. The project coincides with our 25-year celebration, with our group co-contributing towards the cost. This story is about that project and follows the installation and engagement of the boxes. So as an ecologist, do you think that nesting boxes are effective?
There's two aspects to it. Some people say that you shouldn't use boxes because they're only a short-term measure, tend not to last long, so there's a continual requirement for replacement. So sticking them up and then 5 years later they fall apart because of parrots or whatever, and then they're never replaced. So some people say that's just a short-term quick fix, but there's the other aspect of it. They're a fantastic monitoring tool. So often for species that are cryptic, hard to find, you've either got to go to the extent of expensive trapping surveys over a long time, or you can install boxes, check them, and chances are you might find the species you're targeting. So there's sort of two components to it, and each has its merits. If you're wanting to find a particular threatened species or cryptic rare species, they're very handy, but they're sort of used as a surrogate just for a short-term fix, and unless there's preparation involved in maintaining boxes over time, because they do decay and get damaged, limbs fall off trees and damage them. If there's a commitment to keep replacing them until natural hollows can become re-established in regrowth areas, then they're beneficial.
Nesting boxes were installed within the stratified vegetation and also in more open areas, offering opportunities for different species of birds to occupy the boxes.
I wonder what'll live in there and whether they'll have babies.
Let's speed south across the lake to Bonnells Bay, where we'll meet Lakeside Retirement Village team leader Charlene France and hear about the wonderful work her group does to regenerate the salt marsh and stop it from being swamped by asparagus fern. Charlene does an amazing job of rallying the village residents and getting them to help. Here we come, Charlene.
We started Landcare here about eight and a half years ago. I was bowled over by this Crown Reserve at the back of the village that I came to live in. Began to learn then about
how important this site was because of its precious salt marsh, which I gather there isn't so very much left around the lake anymore. The actual salt marsh is formed between the fresh water, which are the streams that come down on either side of the village, and the lake, which is salt, of course. So those two commingle and form a really very special area and a special part of the ecosystem here. Our bird life is fantastic, really. Lots of birds come here. There are many people in the village who are supportive, really, of Landcare, but they're not able to bend and weed and do all the hard work, really. So there are various tasks that they help with. They're a very supportive and happy group, and I'm sure that the village is really very pleased to have us here too. We've got a monoculture of asparagus fern here. That's the basic problem. So we learnt how to deal with that, and by hand weeding when we first started, and to be truthful, we haven't done a lot else because there's an awful lot of it. What's a real joy when you have sort of cleared a patch, you wait a little while and suddenly up come all these wonderful little natives whose seeds have been just waiting to be given a chance. And we get things like, just in this little patch, we've got basket grass, dichondra, the violets, which are just beautiful when they're in flower. We've been extremely lucky in having 2 grants now, which help us. We couldn't tackle such a big area with so few people, with limited capabilities. Unless we had got these grants, which have made a huge difference. We're really very well placed here, and it is a beautiful spot. Villagers still come up to me and say, "Oh, I went for a walk down the reserve the other day. I had no idea what a beautiful place it was. It's so tranquil."
Now we're going down to Coal Point Peninsula to the Arbour Close Landcare site. This area has been subject to a number of impacts from the surrounding urban environment, but is now a tranquil retreat for Landcarer Lower Simpson. Beam us down.
This little reserve is not much bigger than half a dozen suburban blocks. Its biggest threat is the inadvertent invasion of backyard escapees around the boundary. It was farmland, therefore most of the growth here is reasonably young as far as the eucalypts go, but all very healthy. We have none of the major invaders like lantana or bitu or anything like that, so we're quite lucky in that regard. A good diversity of native plants on the ground, in the understory and in the canopy as well.
Now let's swing across to Floraville Landcare site, a rainforest endangered ecological community. Team leader Winston Lankin is passionate about protecting this beautiful gully and its special wildlife.
There's a rainforest gully not far from my house. It's just beautiful and with a diversity of trees and bushes and plants in there. the lantana and bitu were winning. Since working in there though, they're not winning. The vines and the creepers that are weeds are the winning things. In my gully side, I don't need to plant anything because the seeds are already in the ground and they're waiting for some sunshine so that they can pop up. I'm doing it for the flora and fauna of the future because that's their site really.
We'd like to thank you so much for attending our Landcare Week tour this year. Although we hope to be touring the sites again in person next year, we hope that you have enjoyed the variety and originality of this year's tour.